was tolerant for too long, until the truth ended everything. For as long as I can remember, my house was loud. Not with laughter, with impact. Doors slamming, objects breaking, voices rising until words lost meaning. Then silence, then affection, then the cycle started again. My parents didn't fight like people who wanted resolution. They fought like people who needed an audience, and we were always there. Me, my siblings, watching, listening, learning what love was not. My mother believed discipline required pain. My father believed absence was the same as peace. Between the two of them, we were never safe, only managed. Weekends were the worst. They stretched on forever, full of arguments that began in the morning and finished long after midnight. Sleep was optional. School was an inconvenience. We showed up exhausted, unprepared, and already behind. My mother had another weapon, spite. When she wanted to punish my father, she took us away. Not to safety, to her family. People she trusted, people we feared. We stayed for days, sometimes weeks. School missed, friends forgotten, and no one asked if we were okay. I wasn't allowed to have a life outside the house. No clubs, no activities. They said it would distract me, corrupt me, teach me ideas that would make me disobedient. So I learned to observe instead. By the time I was a teenager, I understood something important. My parents ran on patterns, and patterns could be disrupted. I was angry. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that sharpens itself. I hated watching them hurt us and then hold each other like none of it mattered. I hated that the cycle reset while the damage stayed. So I started interfering. I never did anything dramatic, small things, easy things. I took cash in amounts too small to notice. I destroyed items they cared about emotionally. I threw away food they saved for themselves. I left receipts where they didn't belong. I listened carefully when one complained about the other. Then I repeated the words later, not adding anything new, just moving information from one ear to another. They never suspected me. Why would they? I wasn't doing anything they weren't already doing to each other. They always assumed the other one was responsible. As I got older, my thinking changed. I knew I would leave one day, and when I did, my siblings would be trapped, worse than before, because the buffer would be gone. There was something else they didn't know, something only my mother knew, something she used to control me. One of her relatives had abused me when I was young. She knew. She left me alone with him anyway, and when I tried to speak, she told me I would destroy the family, that it would be my fault if everything fell apart. That threat worked for years. My father never knew. He chose ignorance because it was easier. He believed his job was to earn money and look away. I knew if anything would change, it would have to be undeniable. So I waited until I was almost gone, until my siblings were old enough to survive the fallout, until the timing mattered. A few months before I left, I told my father everything, not emotionally, factually, what happened to me, what her family did, what she knew. I told him I wasn't telling him for myself. I was telling him so he would protect the others after I was gone. I told him there was nothing left to save with me, but there was still time for them. He broke, and for the first time he listened. The truth spread fast. Families do that. Secrets surfaced, people separated quietly. Children were removed from homes without explanation. Reputations collapsed inside the community my mother relied on. Some begged me to stop. Some accused me of lying. Some asked me to take it back. I didn't. I left as planned. I cut contact with my mother. I limited contact with my father. I stayed connected to my siblings. What happened next wasn't instant, but it was real. My father cut off my mother's family. He stopped allowing contact. He divorced her when he could safely do so. He took custody of the youngest ones. The older siblings had already escaped. Now I live far away, in another state, with no family nearby. I'm in therapy. I'm learning how to exist without constant tension. I still talk to my siblings. They tell me how things are now. They are fed, protected, seen. My father is not perfect, but he is present, and that changed everything. We don't talk about the past much. We don't talk about what I did. We just stay connected. That is enough for me. I didn't burn everything down because I wanted revenge. I did it because silence was killing us, and telling the truth was the only way any of us survived.
I stayed longer than I should have. I learned early that survival doesn't always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like staying quiet and watching the clock. I loved him once. At least, I thought I did. He never hit me in public, never raised his voice in front of friends, never left marks anyone else could see. What he did instead was measure everything: my words, my tone, my reactions. If I disagreed, he reminded me how much he had done for me. If I pulled away, he told me I was ungrateful. If I cried, he said I was overreacting. I learned quickly that peace depended on my compliance, so I complied. I stopped arguing, stopped explaining, stopped asking for things that required effort from him. I told myself it was temporary, that I just needed time. Time to save money, time to finish my certification, time to make sure I wouldn't have to come back. He liked to say I wouldn't survive without him. I let him believe that. I let him think I needed his approval, his money, his protection. In reality, I was counting every paycheck, every document, every small step that moved me closer to independence. I learned how to stay neutral, how to nod without agreeing, how to apologize without meaning it, how to disappear while still being present. He mistook my silence for surrender. That was his mistake. The moment I left wasn't dramatic. There was no fight, no confession, no closure conversation. One morning, I packed what mattered. I left a note that said nothing important, and I walked out while he was still asleep. He called for weeks, then months. His messages shifted from anger to confusion to blame. I never replied. I didn't leave because I was brave. I left because I was ready, because endurance had done its job, because tolerance was never meant to be permanent. It was a strategy, and once it worked, I didn't look back. I didn't survive by fighting. I survived by waiting until leaving would finally last.